Okay, recording,
All
my
right.
beautiful
All
friends.
right.
I have someone incredible with me today. This is my very own accountability buddy, Jason, my AB. And I'm just like, the universe totally aligned to get us here together. And once again, I was in such a good conversation with you that I was like, wait, let's place record so we can get this in the podcast. So, my first question, drum roll.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
It's actually perfectly matches what we were just talking about. So, how does it feel to be in your body on this planet at this time?
Ooh, that's a tough question. At this moment in time, I'm thinking I'm completely in my physical body. I just went for a jog. For
Mm,
my American counterparts, it was probably about a 3 mile jog. It was extraordinarily hot,
mm.
and that's how I connected to my body with the rhythm of the running, with the rhythm of the my breath, and it was actually quite meditative. I haven't ran since 6 months, maybe 12.
Wow.
I couldn't even tell you, but on this earth at this moment, and actually sometimes during the run, I evaporate from myself because I tune out. Not even with music, I tune out from my actual physical body, and I'm somewhere else. I'm like an effigy of myself watching myself,
Ooh.
and so I I feel even when I cool down, I just had a shower. I was still very much in my physical body, but more often than not, I have periods of time in the day where I'm here and I'm not here, and I don't mean thinking about I'm here, not here, spacing out. I feel like I'm literally an inch outside my
Yeah.
body, like like a reality is trying to catch up to me. I can't always explain it, even when I'm talking to somebody like yourself. Like sometimes I'll just be here and also not here, but it's not a focal point of attention. It's something else, and I can't explain it. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know if other people feel that way either.
I am feeling that way a lot more lately. And I was
Interesting.
explaining it to someone this morning as like, I'm like in my body and not in my body. And there's not like it's more of like a layering and less of like a separation because they're
Right.
definitely both like fully there. So, how it's, and this brings us back to your knife cutting itself. Like,
Right.
I'm in my body, but not in my body.
Right.
Hmm.
And that,
Both.
like, just that analogy transcends the thinking we're all taught to possess, the knife cutting itself. How could you imagine even a knife cutting itself, aside from one knife literally trying to cut it another knife? But I'm like, that's not the point of it. The point of it is to be extraordinarily so abstract that you've broken what you thought was possible inside your head. And
Yeah.
that's why I love that analogy, because every time we do something difficult or what we thought was not possible or what we just thought wasn't we're capable of, I love using that analogy because it's hard to even think of that abstract concept.
Yeah, tell
But
the people. So we're gonna get to like your life and all that good stuff, but let's just because
right,
we just introduced the knife cutting itself, tell the people how the plant medicine delivered this wisdom to you.
right. So this came to me about two two or so weeks ago.
Mhm.
I ingested some magic mushrooms, about 3.5 grams, which for anybody that's not familiar with mushrooms, psilocybin, they're a hallucinogenic fungus. And in Canada, they're quite readily available, thankfully, because they do have quite the amount of healing properties. Once you ingest them, they often cause like vivid hallucinations. They warp the perception of time. They do a whole bunch of things, and it's different for everybody depending on their life history, depending on their story, things like that. I've done them quite a few times, but up until this point, I hadn't done them in quite some time. I would say like 6 months to a year. Um, but so when I ingested them after, I didn't have a plan, but I had an intent. I said, plant medicine, teach me something today. Teach me what I need to know, when I need to know, why I need to know. I
Ooh,
just set an intent. Most of the time it happens, occasionally it doesn't. I just let kind of everything flow as is. At this point, I was very, very, very much alone in my home. I'm very comfortable with doing that. I was safe in a basement. I ordered a pizza
I
just in
love
case I
it.
got hungry. It didn't always work, but this was my go-to, and it was about 10 p.m. So I turned on my TV and I turned on something. The first thing I turned on actually was a retro show about a local park. It's called Canada's Wonderland, and it took me right back to my childhood. So
Oh
that
my God.
set the bar for like super awesome. So that was about an hour, or what my mind told me was 100 hours. I had no idea. There was no perception of time, and it was just wild. It showed the footage from the commercials that I remember from when I was a kid in the
What?
80s, 90s,
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
just wild, and it just documented the park's history. And it actually was a replica from an American company that kind of migrated into Canada, and then it got taken over by Paramount, and now it's some other thing. It's owned by, I think, Cedar Point. I think
Ah,
that like a similar company that's in Ohio.
wow.
Anyway, it's a conglomerate, but I thought that was pretty cool. So then I got at my YouTube feed. Occasionally, I watch construction videos. I'm like, I'm not in the construction field, but I'm very fascinated with engineering and structures and what we do. And
Yeah, I'm obsessed that that's
basically,
like a side interest of yours. I love that
right,
so much.
right. My best friend, bless his heart, he's a civil engineer. So he teaches. I get to ask very deep, intimate questions about these things. So it gets me even more interested. I've always been fascinated with like infrastructure, how it works, these tall buildings, like
I've
how much of it's
actually
underground.
always wanted to know how they build bridges. Are there videos about that?
I, I could literally just tell you how. Oh, 100%. I'll send you links. Yeah,
Please.
like simple, simple. And
Oh my
he
God.
started off in construction, building bridges, basically. Like he's an engineer to build bridges. So
Wow.
he can tell you everything if you ever want to have like a bilateral kind of Zoom conference, or even have him on your podcast.
Oh my
I think that would
God.
be super cool.
That'd be so
I'd like
fascinating.
for him to be one of my first guests as well. But so this channel is called the B1M, and I forget what it stands for. It's like this, this fellow. He's a British fellow, so he has like a very
Love
calming
it.
voice,
Love it.
and he's a big advocate for mental health, especially in the construction industry. Because
Wow.
I didn't realize this. The suicide rate in the construction industry is super high.
Really?
I had no idea. And I don't know what his background is. I think he's an engineer as well, but explains in depth, detailed projects, like big projects, small projects, like all around the world. And then he
Wow.
had this video one day that was very like out of brand for the channel, and it was just about the mental health. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this.
That's so
What the heck's going
fascinating.
on? And again, it's like colloquial tied with like construction workers and people in the construction industry who happen to like suppress their emotions because
Yeah.
they're like acting on a character, things like
Right.
that, right? And I'm like, huh,
Yeah.
interesting. So
Actually,
I
I had a meeting with an HVAC company who
yeah,
like supports HVAC workers about
yeah.
like doing nervous system work with them
Oh,
because it's the
no
same
kidding.
deal there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
that's
really
a big thing because
interesting.
there's not a lot of outlets for mental health because it's like it's very challenging, perhaps like as a male, perhaps
That's
as
right.
like
All like macho. Yeah.
yeah, the macho man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
dig, I work, I
Yeah.
shovel, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah. So I'm like,
Yeah.
huh,
Makes so much sense.
it makes so much sense. So he started this movement. I thought that was cool. But again,
Yes.
I digress. So as I became like more intensely high on these magic mushrooms, the I I think this was an amalgamation of I think five of his top videos from the last couple of years that were on mega projects, and one of them hit on
Nice.
Australia. And the amount of construction that was going on in Australia is incredible. He was talking about an 80 year plan that they have to fix their entire system, and
Wow.
that's like what two generations perhaps,
Yeah.
2 generations of
It's
work.
like
So
those cathedrals they used to build, and it would be
right,
like the grandchildren finished it.
right, and this is beyond me, but in that intensity after watching this, I went upstairs into my kitchen and just decided to I had this epiphany that we are from single-celled organisms became slightly more complex and slightly more complex, became organs, became organ systems, became this, became that, and eventually started to act on our environment. And by proxy of acting on our environment, we developed consciousness. But when did we develop that consciousness? Because ants create wonderful architecture, other animals create architecture, but we really know how to manipulate our environment as this ape species we are. And I just fully connected with the fact that we've transformed our entire earth, either for good, for bad, but we've done something to it. We've transformed in such a insane way. And it just, the deep love and connection I felt for every part of that, it, that I just saw the knife cutting itself. I
Yeah.
can't describe how, I just did. And I just smiled. I started laughing. I started crying. I started giggling, and it just deeply, deeply brought me to this profound like sense of connectedness, and that we can do anything.
Anything.
We can build. If we can have 80-year projects, 100-year projects, 200-year projects, building these massive, massive boring machines using hundreds of thousands of people over generations, we can do anything. And this is just Earth.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
just Earth and the material. So what can we do with the immaterial? What can we do in the energy? What can we do in the ether of the world? How can we channel that? And where do these ideas come from? They can't. Not everybody can come up with these ideas. So where do these ideas come from? Have they always been there? And I got to really some deep questions about like where these ideas come from.
I love it so much.
It still mind bends me to this day.
And what I love is that they gave you that like touch point. So like you said, like any point at which you're like starting to get a little stuck in the like, oh, like things happen according to rules and like we can only do certain things. You can just be like knife cutting itself and remind yourself like
Right.
there are no rules,
No,
no
there are no rules.
limitations.
There are no rules. There are no limitations. In engineering and building, sure there are limitations and rules, but even
But
some of the
even
things that
then,
they they've proposed to counter
yeah,
the things that were the norm
yeah,
just exploded my brain.
yeah.
I'm like, people, we're just capable of so much in these small brains as a collective consciousness,
We've
and
just like scratched the surface.
we're just not even scratching the surface. We're just seeing this. And
I
again,
love
this
it.
takes me to the podcast that I just listened to last night with this gentleman. I forget his name. His last name's Virk, Virk.
Okay.
And again, he's a computer scientist. Was a video game designer. I think he's still a professor. And he just wrote a book, basically like, are we in a simulation? So he kind of, it's not even a debate.
No.
He fully convinced me that
Yeah.
we are in a simulation.
Yeah, they've done like all the like best like math, like physics people have run the
Right.
numbers and like it pretty much the only option is it's a simulation.
And and the reason why I really liked him is because he was a video game designer, and to optimize for the world, he would design video games. So, for example, I'm looking at you, you looking at me. What you're looking at is a rendered version of me on a server somewhere, and I'm looking at a rendered version of you somewhere. So everything else between us doesn't exist until we encounter it or observe it. And that's how you make efficiency. And that's what quantum mechanics actually says as well. Until you observe it, it's not actually there to a certain degree. I don't want to
Right.
disrupt what quantum physics is. And
You have to send me that.
yeah, and then he used another kind of analogy. It was this quasar kind of analogy. So a quasar, I think, is like a rapidly spinning star, or dying star, for example.
Okay.
Anyway, he said like if light's traveling from like let's say 100 million light years away and encounters this quasar, which has a lot of gravity, so it pulls in even light as
Okay.
well. Um, as soon as you observe, like the light either goes left or the light either goes right, but it only goes left or right based on the observation. And I'm like, huh? So I'm not explaining it properly, but there's this paradox in the science. It's actually been measured because you measure it once, it's going left. You measure it again, it's going right. So this decision actually was made a million years ago, but you're looking at it now. So that means the observation can change the
Because
time.
time is not a thing.
Time's not a thing.
Time's not a
So
thing.
yeah, and again, I'm not explaining it quite properly, but I'm like, it just blew my mind
That
because
makes
like these
sense.
decisions being made back in time, we're kind of like reversing it
Well,
based on our observation and thought.
that's right, because time actually like is like all of the times are happening at the same time.
Right.
So that's
Ex-
why the observation,
exactly. And
yeah,
he got into that as well, like multiple timelines, multiple
yeah,
dimensions, and so on and so forth. And it's just
yeah.
just incredible.
Oh my
Incredible,
gosh.
incredible. And
I
we're
love
not,
it. I love it.
and
This
it goes back to us experiencing how we are experiencing our bodies at that certain time. Is that our perception? Or are we just experiencing multiple timelines through these multiple thoughts, through the chemicals being channeled in our brain as these unity conscious organisms?
It's so good. I know. I'm
Yeah,
obsessed. This is why I love your podcast idea, which is just about being curious and like just
just
endlessly
absolute
curious.
curiosity.
Because this is like I can be curious about anything. Like if you had started talking about like olives, like I would be like all in. Like I'm ready for it. I have this high schooler I meet with, and on Sunday we got together and they were like interested in like the geopolitics of like World War I and World War II, and we did
Holy
that for
crap.
2 hours and I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
let's go. Like I
Let's
was
go.
super fascinated. We're like googling, we're like trying to like map it all together. It was fantastic. It's like any topic, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I
I
knew
love
you were
it.
curious. That's why I like having you as an AB, because you're open minded, you're
I
curious,
know.
you ask poignant questions, you push me into the right directions, and vice versa. I try to do the same.
You do. I'm so grateful for you. I love you
Like,
so much. So yes.
yeah,
So let's go back up a little bit. So
backing up.
how did you get to this point of like having this beautiful reality where you're like connecting with your world and the plant medicines and curious and all this stuff? So let's think back like early childhood days. Like, was there a relationship with this like universal consciousness idea? Like, how were you interacting with what is the meaning of life, all that stuff?
So I'm glad you mentioned World War II, because I most likely would not be here unless there was World War II. My
Yeah.
grandparents fled from their home country of Lithuania to Germany. One was taken as kind of slave labor and used in a ammunition factory until that was bombed.
Wow. That
Like
was in
child labor. Like,
Germany, right?
yeah, that was in Germany, right? So they had two options: go to Russia, but the Russians were attacking their village, so they probably couldn't do that. So they literally had to flee to Germany, which they were on the border on anyway.
Hmm.
Um, One suitcase, one cow, pretty standard stuff, right? Uh,
I didn't know
and then
they
my
had a cow with them.
right, it's like something out of like a comic book or cartoon, like
Yeah.
seeing how people were just had to escape then. It was just absolute insanity. So anyway, my grandma came to Canada. My grandpa also came to Canada. They weren't together. They met here, and then they created me. And by how did they do that? My mom and my dad created me, colloquially. So I was born in Toronto,
Hmm.
Canada,
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
1983. Wonderful year. Don't even know what happened except I was born. Also, ironically, my mom was born in the same hospital I was.
I didn't know that.
Funny irony, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a full
yeah, right,
circle
right by the
moment.
lakeshore in Toronto. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Um, e- Ever since I was young, I knew I was a little bit different. I I don't know why. I gravitated toward adults a little bit
Hmm.
more.
Hmm.
Even my mom said, "Hey, go play with kids," but I didn't want to because I thought they were
Yeah.
stupid.
Hmm. Yeah.
I didn't get along with them, and again, I didn't know why. I thought they were too childish.
Hmm.
Um, and just to preamble that a little bit more, my dad left me when I was quite young. In fact, he wasn't even there when I was born. Tried to visit my mother when I was about one, and that just didn't work. And then so on and so forth. He just really didn't want anything to do with me. But I did meet him for the first time when I was 27 after doing some homework to find out actually where he was. So he was in Toronto, and he still is in Toronto, and I still keep in touch with him. So my family structure growing up was me and my mom. I think we were alone for the first year of my life, year and a half ish, and then we moved in with her parents, aka my grandparents, and then I lived happily ever after in
Yay,
kind of
grandma
like a suburb
titties.
of Toronto. Yeah. So I was basically raised by my grandparents. My mom did work a lot. She was a law clerk and legal secretary at the time,
Hmm.
and later actually became a paramedic. Ironically,
Oh, you're kidding.
yeah. And again, to
After
preamble
you
that,
became a paramedic?
you got it. So
Oh
she
my
she followed
God.
in my footsteps. That's the funny part, right? Yeah.
That's
So
epic.
again, to preamble this, I have been working as a paramedic for 19 years now, which which
I
is
didn't know it was
absolutely
that
incredible.
long.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely
early
incredible.
childhood felt like you were
So
different,
the
liked
the
adults.
yeah, and this kind of continued. Like I had no issues in school. Like I kind of hang around. I was a bit of a loner in school. I left one school in grade 6 and then went to another one in grade 7. I didn't even bring any friends because I had no friends. I was also quite rotund, as they would call it, a bit large,
Cutie pie.
and I had a lot of self esteem issues.
Hmm.
And I I think I vaguely remember telling myself that I'm like I don't want this to be I don't want this to be a thing. I'm gonna make some new friends, and I was a
Hmm.
little bit awkward. I think one of the first days I showed up in my elementary school, I was wearing like short shorts, and they were pink, and they had like some. This was just the style at the
Yeah.
time, and like people made fun of me, but I was like pretty persistent and determined to just kind of be who I was, and
Mm.
who I was just I was a happy person. I was a bit of a joker person. I still think I am. I see the humor in life,
Hmm.
and but I had a good head on my shoulders. I feel like even my mom would say, "You never hung around with people that did bad things, and if you did, you'd probably gravitate away from that."
Yeah.
Thankfully. So then I met one of my best friends, who I'm still in contact with, the gentleman who's an engineer, and
Yeah.
in fact, he started making fun of me. So then I always call him out on it, and he apologizes periodically for that. He's like, you know what? That's just a small. People in grade 7 are cruel. People in grade 8 are
Yeah.
cruel,
I have
and
a friend from
yeah,
who like now is a good friend who we had to go through our like reparations period because
right,
she was so
yeah,
mean.
right. And that's
Aw.
how things go. But I'm now best friends with him, and
Hmm.
and still to this day, I just didn't gravitate really toward anybody specific or any one group. Especially when I entered high school, I just kind of got along with everybody. But
Hmm.
it wasn't by trying. It wasn't by desperation. It wasn't by a fluke. It wasn't by. I just generally like people.
Mm.
Yeah, I needed my alone time, a lot of alone time, and I think being an only child and from a single parent family, kind of like latchkey kid, where
Yeah.
they come home and there's no parent, that facilitated that a lot. Just being alone, I felt
Hmm.
lonely a lot, and I really needed the attention of my mother, and who just had to work, unfortunately, and that was the circumstances.
Yeah.
But I always had a phone to call my grandma, always,
Yeah.
always, always, always. Right, my grandma wasn't working because she was retired. She actually took an early retirement package to watch me. So I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that was super cool. So I'm trying to think of the first time I engaged with any kind of psychedelics. It must have been in high school.
Was your grandma like, did she have any like spiritual or religious or like,
She she was a devout Catholic, and I was baptized into the Catholic face.
the Catholic faith?
Maybe that was a Freudian slip, the
I don't
Catholic
know.
face,
I'm
because it's
like,
a mask you put
it
on
is.
potentially. Yes.
Ooh.
Here we go. We can talk about that forever.
Yeah, we
Um,
could.
but she was into the Catholic faith, but I never saw her attend church. Her idea of church was
Mm.
this is so funny. She always pushed us to go to church, but she would never go to church. She would just watch a mass on Sundays, like from her TV. So we would
Oh,
kind of
nice.
bother her a bit. We're like, "Well, Grandma, come with us." She's like, "I don't want to." And that still followed her personality until the day she died. She was kind of like a loner, but like a purposeful loner,
Uh-huh.
and she just kind of kept to herself. But she was super friendly with people. It had
Mhm.
nothing to do with that. So it's just kind of funny that like but she prayed every night. She had her like little statues of Mary, which I have in my room actually
Aw.
from her nursing home and whatnot. But yeah, she believed in Jesus, God, everything Catholic. And my grandpa as well. He was more active in the church community because he was in multiple choirs.
Oh,
Wonderful voice,
wow.
wonderful voice. He was in 3 choirs at the height of it, and
Wow.
I think he was singing almost up until the day he died, as
That's
well.
really cool.
I'm like that. That's super cool. Yeah, nice low baritone voice.
Ooh,
Super cool. Super cool. You can pick him out of a choir because he could wail.
that's
Let
so
me tell you.
cool.
So yeah, it didn't quite influence me, the Catholic Church, and maybe this is where I started. As I talk, I'm just kind of recounting my life, and this is where I'm like, something's not right. Not
Mm.
necessarily wrong with. I'm like this kind of thing. What is this thing? What is this religion we're talking about? Everybody's doing it, following it, but I don't. even as a child, I'm like, I don't think the essence of it is being met. I
Mm.
think people are just unconsciously doing it to do it because everybody else is doing, but nobody's questioning why we're doing it. That's how I knew I was different because I'm like talking to other
Yeah.
people about this, and I'm like, nobody's talking about this. People are just giving me blank answers, couldn't answer me. I'm like, something
Yeah.
else is going on.
And you're like, this doesn't bother you? Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even a bothering. I was just very curious. I'm like, well, why do we have to go every Sunday? What, like, if you gave me an actual answer, like from some scripture or something more deep and devout, I'm like, sure, I'd be more apt to. But I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Why? So many deep whys. Even some priests like don't question it. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I must question it. This is super important to me if I'm going to live a faith of being in the Catholic Church
Yeah.
and whatnot. But that never flew. I always attended like Catholic based schools, but I was more interested in the world religions,
Uh-huh.
Especially the Eastern religions, who kind of
Ooh.
know what's up, especially Buddhism.
So when did you first get exposed to that?
um, I think it was grade 11. 10 or
Uh-huh.
11, we did like world religions, and I'm like, wow, I knew what's up, but I never knew what's up. So
Yeah,
now
yeah,
I
yeah.
know. Yeah, that's what's up. Because you know, we're kind of dating ourselves. We never had the internet back then.
I
We had to go to the
know.
library to do
For
research.
real.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't normal because every time I'd go to the library, I'd go to like the UFO section and be like, how can I channel my past? How can I become telepathic? How can I look for UFOs? How can I delve into this world of the occult?
Really? How did you figure that out?
I, I just enjoyed stuff that wasn't there, and I have no idea why. I've never been able to see things, but I can feel things are there. I can feel spirits probably. I can feel like, for example, my patients at work when they've transitioned to another place, their souls aren't there. I know when people are gonna come back and when they're not, things like that. And that's all. I think that kind of translated. So I've always been deeply fascinated and curious about like the paranormal, the occult, just everything not normal, pretty much.
Have we talked about extraterrestrials, you and I?
We have, yeah,
Okay.
briefly,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
But have you actually seen any or seen a
I
UFO?
I have not that I've no. I don't think I've seen any UFOs. I do a lot of camping and I see some strange lights sometimes, but I'm like, I I know what celestial phenomenon is, so I'm pretty sure I
Yeah.
have not seen a UFO.
Aw. We gotta
Yeah,
get you one.
yeah, I'd be more than happy. I I love one of my favorite questions to people. Okay, you're driving down a highway, middle of nowhere in a desert in Arizona somewhere, or just in nowhere. A spaceship lands. An alien comes out and says, "Are you in or are you out? What do you do?" That's my. I love asking people these questions.
Are you in or you
They're,
out, like in with
are
them?
you coming in or you
Oh,
never? Are you out?
in
So
2000%.
part of the in is like if people probe, I have to make up these kind of rules. I'm like, okay, part of your in is that you're off Earth, you're not coming back, but you're going to be like the captain of this starship.
Yeah.
Are you in or are you out?
In.
Yeah,
In. Yeah. What's your
right.
answer?
I'm more since I had a daughter, it might change a little bit, but I think she would be proud of me that I went in. Because sure as hell, I'd fly that spaceship right back here and
Yeah.
clone her to come with me.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Just
my
invite her.
inclination would be to be in,
Yeah.
and that would be the funny part because is this reality or reality? I'm like, what? It's
Well,
insane.
when my ET came, I was like, "Can I go to your spaceship?" Like
You're
immediately,
like,
like too
hmm.
excited. Like way I was like way too
Like,
eager.
hold the
And
phone here. Hold the
exactly, they were
phone.
like, "All
We
right."
just here to ask questions. Okay.
Like literally you get to say hi today and that's it.
But back to the spaceship. Can I go on it? No, no,
Nope, not
no.
today.
You just
No,
get to say hello.
they later told me that they don't even use spaceships and that was like it was like basically they put themselves into the classic like ET looking body so that I wouldn't
Right.
freak out because I had like a context for that, but they're like
Yeah.
sea creatures who like teleport places. So
Right.
there's
Or
no spaceship.
interdimensional or kind of. I've also heard like the ETs, like the classical greys, are like maybe biologically created as opposed to like humanoid. Like they're humanoid enough so that we might be them in a million years, but they could also be biologically created,
Yeah.
like a 3D printer for biology.
Yes. Or like
Yeah,
their physical thing that they
like,
inhabit is 3D
right.
printed. Yeah, it's like a cloth.
Which is us. It's essentially us. We just haven't figured out how to exit consciously, or a lot of people have, but in the normative world, they have not.
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
love it so much. Okay, so you were like reading about occult stuff.
right.
You said
In
starting
high school,
psychedelics in high school?
right? And it psychedelics brought me in high school. I never realized the gravity of it, but I was never in fear of them. A lot of people had like bad trips. I've never had a really bad trip,
Hmm.
and I don't know if that's just my personality because I have a lot of scary stuff with like abandonment as a kid, and a lot of like needs and wants, and um, as an adult, I was diagnosed with ADHD, so a lot of predisposition to maybe potentially be paranoid about loss, be
Hmm.
paranoid about. But no matter how much I did, I was never really paranoid.
Hmm.
It's very
Nice.
it's very strange. I just surrendered to the process, and it really enjoyed myself, no matter what happened. Even if scary stuff happened, even if I saw like shadow figures, even if I'm like in the
Hmm.
middle of the woods with nobody, I'm like, what? I don't know. Nothing tripped my fear mechanism. I'm like, but I don't know if that was a function of just who I am or whatnot. And this is far before I became a paramedic or anything. So this is just me as a teenager. Yeah, I really wish I could go back to my very first time I tried mushrooms. I think it was at a friend's party, and I had a great time. I think, if I can remember that time. But it didn't bring me that to like that unity consciousness. I only
Yeah.
started kind of exploring in the last like 5 to 10 years, like where that can bring me that kind of unified consciousness.
Ah.
And it because before, like oftentimes teenagers will just use things for recreation as opposed to
Yeah.
exploration. So
Ooh.
in the last decade, it became more of an exploratory introspection as opposed to
Hmm.
I'm here to party and see weird colors and blah 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 blah.
So
So
did you have that phase? Were you like a party person?
I wouldn't say like huge party. It just kind of like followed me where occasionally I would. I've probably done almost every drug short of like injecting
Oh.
drugs, and I really like just like I like exploring my mind. I like exploring like the capacity of what I'm able to experience through either like natural drugs, chemical drugs, and I think my body was okay with that because every drug I've ingested, I felt fine the next day. Everybody's like hungover, felt sad, depressed, felt like shit,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I feel great. What's wrong with you people? Unless it
Fascinating.
was mixed with alcohol that night, then it was a little bit different. But
Yeah.
otherwise, like I felt great
Huh.
all the time without fail,
Huh.
and it's the most bizarre thing
Yeah,
because
I'm
often
so
people will,
curious about like why people end up a person who's like tried every drug or like a person like me who's like literally tried no drugs.
yeah,
Like why? Like why
yeah,
did I not? Why did you?
right. And I asked those questions too. I was just very curious. I'd probably be less apt to try drugs now because of some of the fentanyl issues and
Yeah.
the supply contamination. Like if there was like a safe drug supply, then
Mm.
I'd be more of an advocate for that, sure. But like
Hmm.
I was doing that at seldom points in time in my life. There was no fentanyl crisis.
Yeah.
There was no tainting of of the supply chain of drugs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was yeah, I've had quite the life of exploring different like psychedelic worlds. I've ingested DMT, like dimethyltryptamine, in like a vape format, and that's one of the most potent psychedelics in the world. It only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes, but it transports you into something. If you want to see ET realm, that transports you into an ET realm. Let me tell you.
Is that the one that they were doing with Vietnam vets?
Um, that might have been LSD. Might have been LSD. I have not done
Uh,
LSD though. Right,
hmm.
that's a very long lasting hallucinogen. I'd be very curious to try it. DMT only 5 10 minutes,
Huh.
but when I remember one of my DMT experiences being so profoundly vivid that every cell in my body was just lit up with love. And I I watch a lot of near death experience videos, and this is how they described coming
Yeah.
coming home to heaven, coming home to whatever, coming home to insert what you're familiar with. And they say when you die, there's a lot of DMT released endogenously in your brain.
Oh,
So
no kidding.
so is this kind of what we're experiencing on a more profound level, and I'm just ingesting
Oh,
it externally? So I'm like, did because I can relate to a lot of these DMT experiences. A recent near death experience video I watched, it was 10 minutes, but this guy kind of had an out of body near death experience when he was about 13, 14 as a teenager. I think he's in his early or mid to late 20s now, and he just started talking about this within the last year or two. But he actually tried DMT. So not only did he have a point of reference for a near death experience, but now he has a DMT trip on his hands. And he said, though he met an entity, like he met something or someone or an angel or whatever in his near death experience when he was a
hmm.
teenager, and then met the same entity, a shit you
Yep.
not, doing
It took
DMT.
him to the same place.
It took him to the same place to see the exact same thing, and the entity's like, "What are you doing here?"
Oh,
Like
like I didn't
it
have you on my radar for today.
right. It's like they exist in another things exist in another
Yeah,
dimension, and
yeah,
they're actually doing tons of studies, I think, in Europe now to extend people's DMT experience by IV therapy, like
yeah,
actually keep you in that realm to
yeah,
see if you can see these like conscious entities. Because a
yeah,
lot of people that do DMT um, do say that they encounter entities or like kind of like these elves, and they have messages for them,
yeah,
but it's a universal experience by all people.
yeah,
Not all people, but a lot of people have experienced these similar things, like through cross cultural North America, South
right.
America, Europe, Asia, Antarctica.
That's
So
amazing.
do we have a collective consciousness, or is this where we go when we die? Like
You said the brain releases DMT when you die. Like, is that like right away or is it like delayed? Do you know?
I don't know. There was an actual I think an actual recent, I don't know if it was a study, but it was published in a scientific journal where somebody was getting like an electroencephalogram done, like
Yeah,
an EEG on their brain, where they put all those dots on your
yeah,
brain. So I think, like, let's say they had a seizure disorder, they were being investigated,
yeah.
but then they died. Like they weren't
And they
expected to die;
saw,
they just happened to die, and they got
yeah,
all of the readings pre-death, and all these like waves went wild. But then it like kind of stabilized out, and then but they were similar to like a DMT trip. People have been monitored on the
yeah, sure.
EEG. Yeah, and produced all these very similar waves. So I'm like, holy shit. So now
Yeah,
they
that's so
actually have
curious.
some, like by proxy of this accidental death.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh?
Because when I don't know if I died or almost died, like I had an NDE, and I wonder if like I died enough that I got the DMT or what, and then
Yeah,
maybe that's where the NDE comes from. Like
yeah,
maybe you're like get that flood
yeah,
of DMT and then you like don't die and it like fades off or something.
yeah. Yeah, and then your body just comes back and be like, okay, let's get back to equilibrium
Yeah.
and no more DMT. And again, this is like I don't know if they can like measure it consciously, the amounts of DMT in your brain, your blood. Like
Mm.
I don't actually know because you can't consciously kill somebody as for an experiment anymore, right? Darn it. I don't know if they can do it in rats, but they say it's in the pineal gland, like in your brain.
Ha.
Um,
Yeah, because
yeah.
like you're saying that like every cell is like love, like everything is love, like everything's okay. Like that's
Everything was okay. I could have died right then and there. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm okay.
yeah,
Everybody else is going to be okay. I'm going to
yeah,
see them again. No problem. And
yeah,
that conscious kindness is just,
yeah,
it's there and it's accessible by everybody, not necessarily by a psychedelic, but it's just there.
yeah, yeah. It's the underlying foundation. And when the
Right.
other
And
stuff gets kind of like removed, that's what's there.
that's what I realized exactly. When you remove everything and just strip everyone away from their consciousness, that's what we are. We're just love.
Yeah, yeah,
We're just love. That's all we are. We just happen to get piled under our own pit with our experiences on this
yeah,
Earthville population U, on
yeah,
this Earth realm. We
yeah.
get buried under it until we realize we can see the knife that cuts itself.
And now we're done.
Now we're done here.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's wild.
So
So
when you think about your like day-to-day life, like has there, I guess, first question, has there ever been a time where you were like, it's too hard to be here, or have you been okay with being here the whole time?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. I've been so uncomfortable in my life that I'm like I almost pseudo tried to kill myself. I think like when I was 12 or 13. I think it was definitely like a cry for help. I
Yeah.
just I just went out in my shorts and t-shirt into a snowbank and just laid there. I just want to
Oh,
die. I was just so lonely, disenfranchised. I had like no
right.
friends, and maybe I had a fight with my mother, and
Yeah.
like no, and, but there was nobody to understand me. I really had a hate for the world because like it didn't give me a father, for example. I
Yeah.
really wanted a father figure, or I thought I did at least.
Yeah.
And I was just really lonely
Mhm.
and sad. And I really wanted attention from my mother. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, she wasn't able to give it to me in the way that
Mhm.
I most likely functionally needed.
Yeah.
So, but that's probably like one of the first times I can remember that. And some other periods in my time, like what would it be like if I weren't here?
Mhm.
There's no plan, but I'm like, actually, like, what would it be like?
Mhm.
Insert XYZ. Like, hmm. And it's not, and I have the really like wonderful opportunity to people who have attempted suicide.
Mhm.
I've brought back from a suicide attempt and like a semi completion,
Yeah.
and and I've talked to other people that have literally tried and got caught. For example, they would tie a rope around their neck, and then somebody
Yeah.
walks in at the last second when they just lose consciousness.
Yeah.
They say people in that part of their life have been explained multiple times that they were like completely fine all day
Total
long,
peace.
total peace at the act, and then when they're caught, they're almost like embarrassed. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
what did I
yeah.
do?
The worst.
Things like that, and that seems to cross a lot of in many people that I've spoken to, and I'm like, I kind of felt that way as well. Like I was
Mhm.
embarrassed when I was like caught in a snowbank by my
Yep.
mom, just like so. So that's a really good question, and I think that was like a counter response, like that me feeling and thinking that just being in this body. Plus, I actually didn't want to be in my body because I was a large human,
Yeah.
and that was a source of contention for people to make fun of me
Yeah.
or
You were
bully me.
told that was a problem.
I was told that was a problem, right? And physically, I know that's actually most likely a problem because that can lead to disease. But I know why I ate a lot. It's because my grandparents came from Europe and said, "Eat your food."
Yeah.
Starving people. We had nothing. Scarcity
Right.
mentality makes
Right.
me eat more. Plus, I had a very much access to a lot of like highly processed foods, pastas, juices, things like that, which I still love today, but not in any way, shape, or form that was detrimental and deleterious to me. But
But you
well,
said, that you knew like that was a source of like support when you
yeah,
really needed support.
food is a damn good source of support because it provides neurochemicals to you right away, especially sugar, 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 sugar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what do you remember happening like after that snowbank? Like what was the next 5 years?
I don't actually remember because I think I masked a lot of like sadness and depression
Mm.
with just eating or being silly or like wearing the mask of kind of silliness where I'm like I was kind of a sad teenager.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it was like a hormonal surge issue. It was just like I was just kind of like I'm a little bit bigger and I'm like I don't know how to I I tried working out. I didn't know how to work out. I tried lifting weights. I got a little bit bigger, but I'm like it didn't relieve some fat. And eventually you want to attract like the opposite sex or the same sex, and you're like, hmm, how does this go? Well, it doesn't when in this general normative way it
Or
doesn't. So you
again,
have
you
like
were
all this like
told like that's going to be a problem.
right. I don't even remember talking to anybody about this. Like again, my mom wasn't there as much as she could have been, I guess. So I didn't really have anybody to bounce ideas off of. And my other friends were kind of nerds and kind of stuck in the same position as well. Um, yeah, but I actually met good people in high school that just kind of not necessarily supported me, but were like just really good friends to be around. They didn't do anything like terrible. Like yeah, they were a little bit reckless sometimes, but they didn't. It didn't lead me. I never ended up in the hospital or jail, so that's a good thing. Probably should have a couple of times, but I, but I think what really gave me a new sense of hope and purpose was me getting accept. I wanted to go to medical school. I was always fascinated in
Oh,
yeah, that was like you've seen the Learning Channel.
yeah,
Like originally, the Learning Channel was about learning, not
it
about like
was.
it was about learning. So that's when I encountered the Learning Channel. And that was one of my favorite channels because it exhibited science, it exhibited this, it exhibited that. And one of my favorite programs was the Surgery Channel, where they would
Yeah,
perform
right.
surgeries, and that was I could eat dinner watching that. I'm like, okay, this is bizarre. Nobody should be watching this. It makes me like it was just joyful watching. I'm
I
like,
loved those two. I'm
right.
right there with you. I was
Um,
obsessed.
it made me want to become a surgeon. So in one of my career classes, I said, hey, I'm going to become a surgeon, blah 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 blah, or a doctor of some sort. So I knew I wanted to kind of like help people. Plus, I like people.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the marks to go to medical school. I don't think I had the motivation either, and school was pretty hard. And again, being a sad kid, like there's not a lot of motivation to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I did apply to paramedic college and at our local community colleges, and somehow I got in from high school.
That's amazing.
And 60 people got in, 1,000 people applied, and only four of those people were from out of high school. So I must have done something right. Must have done something right. So and
And
that's where I found my purpose.
I was just gonna say, and that was that a like identity that brought you more into connection with wanting to be here?
Correct, very much so. And now I had a purpose. Now I had
Mm.
kind of like a passion to go to. I had no idea what paramedics did, even up until like maybe the first and a half years. I'm like, oh my gosh, just the gravity of the situation. Because
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I started when I was 18. I'm like, no 18-year-old kid has business taking care of people. Like, get out of here, get out of here. I have no business telling adults their loved ones are dead. I'm like, get out of here. This is nuts.
They just threw you in there.
They just kind of threw me in there. But it was a hell of a ride, the training, and then they put me on the road as a paramedic at 21. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, 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 cool. So from
Amazing.
then on there, like it's been like coupled with like I don't know if it's depression or just kind of like ups and downs, like waves of like me not wanting to conform with reality. So like different
Hmm.
relationships, attracting different partners.
Hmm.
Um, I, I've traveled a lot too. Thank
That's right.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of saving for things, I'd rather just experience the world, kind of that way. And now I have the tendency to experience consciousness, but that's how I experience consciousness is by meeting new people.
Hmm.
And people who tend to travel, you meet them, they know a little bit more than the average human because A, they have access to money or hostels, depending who they are, and B, they have the curiosity to travel and go
That's
in the
right.
middle of nowhere, and so that they tend to be more open minded.
Hmm.
So meeting those people have been fantastic all over the world, all over the world.
Amazing, amazing. And then you've had almost 20 years of this paramedic career, and it's given you a ton of purpose. And I know, like, at least in the time period that we've known each other, and maybe a little bit leading up to that, you've had like wanting more, like, and like, how has that come online?
And again, I don't know if it's a function of myself or the person that's controlling me as a puppet from another room over there. Um, the entity known as Jason, who's visibly in this camera, who's being recorded on this server, often wants a little bit more. I don't know what a little bit more looks like, but I like challenges. I like to
Hmm.
see how far I can get my brain going to process things, to do something different than average. Because being stuck, I don't like being stuck.
Hmm.
I don't like
Hmm.
being stuck in a place for very long. So I joined this program called the Reality Master Program, created by Quasi Joe here. And I've never heard of this person until somehow I watch YouTube a lot until after my grandma died. This just happened to come across. So my grandma died. My
Oh,
grandma, my loving stone, my loving rock, grounding human, just happened to pass away in like Ju- July, July last year. So
oh my gosh. I didn't know she passed away so recently.
yeah, super fresh. But she she allowed me to be free of everything. Like I made a video of her like in 2018 saying, as soon as I die, you're gonna be okay. So I actually just followed that. I'm like, I'm going to be okay. She's like, I'm an old woman. My life has been lived. I need you to keep living. Cry for me a little bit, but keep going. I
Whoa.
need you to do that. And I'm like, okay, grandma, thank you. So I have this video. I still have this video.
Oh
And I watch it. And if I need a little bit of like oomph,
my God, I
right?
want to
I go,
watch it.
surprisingly, I was a little bit sad when she died, but I'm like, no, you lived to the age of 94. I took great care of you. We spent a million years together, and we're probably going to spend a ton more lives together. Like we're like inexorably connected to each
Yeah,
other in multiple lives. I know that we're like best friends and stuff like that. But I'm like, inevitably, people die, and that's okay. And that she gave me the solace to know that she would be okay and I would be okay. Thank
that's
goodness.
amazing.
So this brought me to more of a freedom. I'm like, wow, I feel so good. I feel so good. I need to do something different with my life. I need to help more people. I don't know how. So I took this leap of faith and joined this reality mastery program, much to the chagrin of my partner and the expense cost of it.
Uh,
It's not cheap, and I realized it was designed that way to get you to where you need to
Propel
be.
you. Yeah.
Because if you spend $100, you're not going to do it. If you spend 500, you're not going to do it. 1,000,
Mm-mm.
maybe depending on your circumstances. But this is a lot more money than I was ever. I could be doing a lot of other things, and this is what my partner countered. You could do a lot with this money. I'm like, I can, but this is the first time I've consciously invested into myself for self
Hmm.
development. I've done like free courses, I've done like online learning, but I'm like, this is the
Hmm.
first time I have some skin in the game, as they would call it. And sure as fuck, I love it. I've met people like you. I've met other people, and I just finished the actual coursework probably in around the same time you would. I took my time with it, and I'm just starting to redigest it and re kind of tool where I want my life to go. And in and of that, I want to start a school group. I've already started a YouTube channel, as you know. I think you've plugged it on your school group now, called
Yeah.
Zen Vibration Nation.
Yeah. We'll put the link
And
in the description.
it's and oddly enough, as soon as I joined this, within a couple of months, it diminished a lot of my ADHD symptoms, which
Talk about
blew my,
that.
blew my fucking mind.
Talk about that.
Blew my fucking mind. So ADHD is a diagnosis in North America. I think they probably have some diagnosis in Europe or whoever follows the regimen of the DSM or Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's the colloquial Bible that psychiatrists use predominantly in North America to diagnose things. And the reason why you get a diagnosis is because you're having an allergy to reality. Like,
Ooh,
you like that? I'm like,
that's the
oh, wait,
name of this
uh,
episode.
the allergy to reality. I love calling things an allergy to reality because I'm like, okay, well, you're having a problem with your partner, you're having a problem with an ex partner, you're having a problem with your kid, you're having a problem with work. Okay, well, now we need to drug you, give you medicines, blah, 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 blah. So as soon as you have this allergy to reality, they try to look for these different patterns and try to fit you in this manual and say, you have this. We're going to do this.
God, can you please write a book called An Allergy to Reality? I'm
Yeah,
obsessed.
I can. I haven't used that term in a long time. I don't know why I did, but this is why I thought I'm like, people are people. This is why I do my job because people have a reality to or allergy to reality. I can
Yes.
see it every single day. So back to the
Yeah,
ADHD, I
yeah, yeah.
was literally having an allergy to reality because I'm like I wasn't showing up to work, but always late. I was having like troubles in my relationships, trouble forming bonds. So I got some testing done. I'm pretty sure I have some learning disabilities, but also like medium grade ADHD of the inattentive subtype. There's
Okay.
hyperactive and
Okay.
inattentive, just to super simplify it. So that would explain a lot of things that have been going on in my life. But as soon as I started doing the coursework from the reality mastery program, which has you do a lot of things that you're uncomfortable with, like, hey, there's a whole week where you have to do opposites. So if you're, just trying to think of an opposite.
Like if you're extroverted, then you gotta like spend more time alone. If you're
Exactly. Or
introverted, you gotta
if you're
spend a
late,
lot of time with.
if you're late for everything, be 5 minutes before
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Just, or if you hit your snooze button for 5 times, get up
yeah,
at your life expense. So do something completely opposite.
yeah.
Completely opposite. So I just realized a lot of my thoughts, ideas, and behaviors were a conscious creation of my behaviors that I grew up with, reactionary to the reality I grew up with, henceforth the allergy, and henceforth what I was projecting to the world. I'm
Hmm.
like, holy shit, ADHD, at least for me or my diagnosis, this doesn't go for everybody. It's a behavioral issue.
That.
Some people will say as well, it's a developmental issue. I'm like, of course it's a developmental issue. You're having an allergy to your environment.
It's a behavioral response.
It's a correct. It's a behavioral
Yeah,
response,
I
and
wouldn't even call it an issue. It's just a behavioral response. Like it's
right,
morally neutral. It
right.
just is like, oh, this
It's only
happened, so I'm going to do this.
yeah. You can probably put me in some jungle and I'd be fine. Nobody would know. I wouldn't know any better. Or put
Yeah,
me in a situation where I would go to war. I would have no problem. These are my
yeah.
traits and advantages. I would be perfectly fine. But in normal life, these were not my traits or advantages. So I realized that could be corrected with some like really deep work and paying an extraordinary amount of money for this course.
Well,
So
it's the you like paid to pay attention, right? You
right,
like
skin in the
pay
game.
attention. Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that double entendre. You pay
Hmm.
attention. That should be a book.
All right.
Oh my god. I'm gonna write that one down. I don't have a pen with me, but I'm like
I got it
paid
for you.
attention. So so this is how I realized I'm like, I can do anything because I can craft my reality
Yep.
to it's still going to be difficult because I still live in a reality where I still interact with people.
Yeah.
But then I realize I'm like, what's my limiting belief every single day that stops me from doing insert this, insert that? And I have people like yourself to tell me that's a limiting belief. This is a limiting belief. You crafted that from when you were super little. You know, there are some biological mechanisms as well. When I met my dad for the first time, I'm like, shit, dude, you also have what probably would be described as ADHD, your functionality, your criminality, your behavior, your lack of responsibility for a whole ton of things. I'm like, that could be classified as a lot of ADHD or whatever you want to call it.
But like the physiology responds to the environment too, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
like all of us, like and that's why I'm obsessed with the allergy to reality is like you you're just like trying to do the thing that will like make the situation work. And
Right.
it's when we stop trying to make the situations work, that's when we realize like we can be whatever. It's the
Right.
manipulation of yourself to try to like fit the external,
Right.
which fucks you up.
And that's what I was doing,
Yeah.
which was basically the response that's why I was having the reaction because of
Yeah.
like I was literally I was trying to be non-abandonment. I was trying
Yeah.
to be this or
Yeah.
be that for what I felt was my reasons for safety, unbeknownst to me.
Self-preservation.
Correct, of course, that would be anybody's reaction in that situation.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
what this program has taught me is to be more conscious of my thoughts. Like walking consciously is now almost my day to day.
And that permission, like you said, to do something opposite, to be like, all right, so was I an inattentive person? Like, yeah, but do I
Oh
have to
yeah,
be that forever?
nah,
Like, was I a person who like didn't like hot sauce? Do I have to be that forever? Like, just like do the opposite thing. Like,
yeah,
just that's what I love too about that when we did the personality test thing, and he was
the
just like, now
MBTI thing.
be the opposite. Yeah,
Yeah,
like just
that's why I love that exercise. It told me probably what I knew and like how to opposite itself. I'm like, oh, okay, very cool.
yeah, which goes back to what we were talking about at the very, very beginning about like trans people. They like
Yeah,
literally are like, okay, you're telling me I'm this, but like maybe I'm something different and I'm just gonna go ahead and like not do that just because you told me it doesn't
right.
mean it's like just because your experiences told you you were abandoned, like does that
It,
mean you have to live with abandonment?
right.
Probably not.
And the irony, I've always been kind of like, quote, fuck you to the man kind of deal, like rebel, anti disestablishmentarianism mentality. So I'm like, why haven't I anti disestablishmentarianism to myself against
Yeah.
myself? Why can't I harness that power? I'm like, think I
You
started having. I'm
can.
rebelling against myself and doing opposites,
Oh, that's also good. Rebelling against myself.
right? Because there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, down with this, down with that. But is that serving with you? Can you harness that power and energy to actually be yourself? If
Mm-hmm.
you're like a counter human,
Yep.
like an anti-establishment kind of person, like you can totally harness that energy. I just realized that. I'm like, why haven't I just done this for myself? Because like this is my way of thinking. I'm like anti this, anti that, because I can be. I'm like, well, how do I harness that consciously now to
Knife
reset
just
myself?
cut itself.
Night, how do exactly? Oh my god.
Oh my word.
My
Uh,
word is wow.
well, I
Hmm.
knew that this was going to be fabulous because it's
Hmm.
fabulous every time we talk, and I'm so grateful. And we could go on forever, so we'll make
Forever, literally.
we will do that because I'm so grateful that you're in my life, and we could go on forever. Um,
Wonderful.
but before we wrap up this and let the rest of the world go, do you want to tell people anything about yourself, about your YouTube, any like if people want to connect with you, anything like that?
Yeah, great question. It, it's funny. Speaking of disestablishmentarianism, I don't really have social media. I never have. I actually Hina told me to download TikTok and just investigate it because I
Mm,
sell. Oh, I also sell things on Amazon too, but that's a whole other story. So I don't have Instagram. I do have
mm.
Facebook. That's locked down so tight though. I do have an email address as well. I don't know if that would be the best connection point,
Yeah, you think about
but
it.
yeah, yeah. But I do have a YouTube channel. It
I
does do
think
guided.
people could make comments maybe on your YouTube and then
Oh, absolutely. But if you do actually want to connect, please do with my email. It's Jason Slenys. So JASONSLENYS at gmail.com. Connect
yeah,
with me there.
I'll put it in the description.
Absolutely. I'm like, should I give out my phone number? I give it away
No,
pretty freely. I'm like, nah, I didn't think so. I'm like, no, no, too
no,
much, too much, too
no,
much.
no, you shouldn't. Yeah.
Or yeah, my YouTube channel is like at so the at symbol. So if you do youtube.com/at Zen vibration, like vibrate, vibrate, vibrate nation. So there's like kind of two ends in the middle. Zen vibration nation.
Zen Vibration Nation. It's
Yeah, you
beautiful,
got
you
it.
all. And like,
Yeah,
if nothing else, like, please go look at the artwork because Jason has been like becoming a total genius with like AI creation art.
I
And
have a
it's
lot of fun.
so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And at some point, you are going to do a tutorial so that rest of us can learn how to do it too. But
You got it. You got it.
okay, beautiful. I'm gonna put all of it in the description. Thank you so, so
Oh,
much.
thanks
I'm
so much
gonna,
for having me. I really appreciate it. This is our first time connecting kind of virtually this way when in our virtual environment, in our virtual lives, in our whole virtual whatever it is. But regardless of how virtual it is, my heart is filled, my cup is filled. So thank you.
ah. Did it just
Super
feel
awesome.
like we were just talking?
Yeah, it's just like we were just talking. That's it.
Yeah,
And that's how I want it. That's how I envisioned this to be, and that's how I wanted it to be. That's it. Just
you
us,
got it.
just me and you talking. That's it.
I love it so much. Okay, I'm gonna end the recording and then we'll keep
All right,
talking.
Z. Peace out, everyone.